Stuart Goldsmith, and in this clip from my Comedian's Comedian podcast, I'm talking to the living legend that is Janeane Garofolo. We're going to talk about how narcissism can be okay if you're a creative, perhaps, and we'll also find out that she is emphatically not the actual Gruffalo. You can find other clips like this all over this YouTube channel, so please like and subscribe to it, and you can download the full episode from comedianscomedian.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
I don't like to look at reviews because it hurts my feelings. Criticism does not roll off my back at all.
That's very honest.
It hurts me terribly.
Sure.
And especially sometimes when you're reviewed and the person has misunderstood you completely. And of course, nothing is more powerful than a fixed idea. Once that person states that you meant this or that you are this, that's really the way it is once it appears in the press. And a lot of times people want to tell you about the bad review. And I am a fan of kill the messenger. I really blame them more than even the person that wrote. I can't stand, well, I just thought you'd think it was funny. No, I don't think that's funny, that the person said A, B, and C about me.
Sure.
That has always bothered me. And now it's almost a sport, a snarky review. It's almost a competition between reviewers.
Absolutely.
To
say,
can
draw the most blood.
Yeah. It's a very strange thing. So I try and stay clear of it.
Who has got you the most wrong in terms of your
reviews?
My
gosh, so many. So many over the years.
What sentiment was the furthest away from what you were actually trying to...
Well, actually, you know what? Something is interesting. In a magazine that's out here about the festival, and it has... shows to see, it like picks a handful of shows, and unbeknownst to me, I was picked, and unbeknownst to me, that person, I think, has mistaken me for another person. What they said, it was absolutely antithetical to anything I've ever said, and not me. And they even said one thing. One of the first sentences was self-professed Botox fan. Now, I'm agnostic about Botox. I'm fine with it. I'm not going to, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to criticize someone for getting it. And I have had it in my forehead. It doesn't really work that well. I'm fine with it.
Okay.
I have never taken a stand on Botox. You know what I mean? Like, insofar as that anybody, especially in this country, would pick that up. And then it said, and was also papped, which I found out means a paparazzi picture, was also papped showing off her fuller lips. That's absolutely not true. I have never had anything, and you looking at my mouth can see that clearly if I was going to have something done, they would not look like this. If I was going to spend, I mean, do you know what I mean? And I have never had a paparazzi. I don't know I don't know who that person is talking about.
Do you know, the worst aspect of that is self-professed. That's one of the things, like that is just taking so much kind of empowerment away from you. Go, well, this person, as we know, constantly talks about
self-professed. And actually, they weren't being mean-spirited. There was nothing vitriolic per se about this. Go see this person. Now, having read that little blurb, I would never go see me.
Yeah,
there was nothing about anything of interest. A self-professed Botox man who was showing off my fake lips, which just isn't true, in a paparazzi picture in this country. I don't know what they're talking about. And you can never convince someone that that's right. You always seem like you're being defensive.
Yes. You have to look through the rest of the ones to watch that person's written and gone, have they substituted? You've got to see if you can discover yourself.
I'm not familiar with the other comics. I'm ashamed to say. I don't know them personally. But that one was the weirdest thing, and it is also, there was not one thing that would make a thinking person go, I'm going to go see that performer. So that was, I mean, on the one hand, I was thankful they picked me, but I do think that they think I'm someone else. Because I don't know who, and I was trying to think, who is it? Somebody with a similar name.
The festival to work it out.
Yeah, I guess so. But,
it's the Garofolo game.
Yeah. And then there's also a thing called the Gruffalo.
Yeah, of course.
A children's, a Gruffalo. I didn't know about that. But that's interesting. I guess it's...
I've got to be honest with you. I was a toddler, as I mentioned. The Gruffalo is a big part of the life of my toddler and the life of toddlers up and down the country. And a friend of mine suggested a few days ago, when you interview Janeane, you should, as a joke, pretend that you have misunderstood and that she is the actual Gruffalo.
Well, that actually would be fine with me, but I would know what you were doing because I saw on the posters there's a Gruffalo. Or I might say, I think you're thinking of Mark Ruffalo.
Yeah, right. Gotcha.
As an actor with a name almost, I guess if you combined us, that would be the most, because I'm Garofalo and he's Ruffalo.
Yeah.
So,
that could steer.
see, isn't this fascinating? Aren't I fascinating podcastee?
So let's get to the heart of your stand-up performance, which I came and saw a couple of nights ago, and which was fantastic. I've never seen you live before. And for the benefit of people in the UK who are less familiar with you as a stand-up...
Which would be most people. I mean, I wouldn't expect people to be familiar with me at all, but especially as a stand-up. I mean, I've very rarely performed in the UK.
I think people in the UK would know you from...
the 90s.
Movies, the 90s
from the
movies,
90s.
from being a sort of a reluctant or otherwise whatever the word is, flag bearer for Generation X.
Which also I'm not. I'm the tail end of the baby boomers. I'm 54, and in Reality Bites, which maybe is where that started happening.
I think so, yeah.
Which is a quote-unquote Gen X film. Everyone else was 21. I was 29. So I've actually, I've never been Gen X. That's another thing. And also, I think another thing in the States anyway, where used to be, I find problematic, people used to confuse me with some of the characters I was cast as. My first acting job was the Larry Sanders Show with the great late Gary Shandling. And I was asked to play a real person, because a lot of the characters were based on people that worked at the David Letterman Show. And one of the people who Paula, my character, was asked to mimic was a person who worked backstage at Letterman. Now, this person, I guess, was pretty surly and taciturn and not very nice to everybody. Yeah. So from that first job, I guess I must have done it pretty well, because then I kept getting jobs to play a similar person, and I wasn't smart enough to figure out, oh, you're going to get typecast. Okay. And it's not me. I mean, I don't behave in that manner. I don't behave in the way that person in Romeo and Michelle's high school reunion behaves, or, any of the things. And also a person that looks like me, because it's just stupid. People make decisions on what you look like. And when, when I was getting cast in movies, I wasn't classically attractive. And I'm still not, but I'm just saying that decisions are made for you. You look like this, so you will play this kind of person. Okay. And I didn't realize that if you keep doing it over and over again, then that's who you are.
Yes. And for you, it was kind of the quirky best friend of the female
or
lead.
cynical best friend who is not particularly attractive and is real mad about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
that kind of thing. And actually, the first big studio film I was in was a retelling of Cyrano. Yes. It's called The Truth About Cats and Dogs. Yeah. So apparently, I'm so hideous, I must hide my identity. and I remember feeling badly about it, but being thrilled somebody wanted to cast me in a film. So these dueling issues, I felt sad that, I must be, because they even said to me, you're perfect for this. A person who looks so...
Is so upset about their appearance.
No, I'm not upset about it. Others clearly are upset about it. So I hide my identity. Now, having said that, I'm not complaining about this profession. It is elective. We choose to do it. So, and no one makes you do it. So to complain about it is really a fool's errand, because but I can only tell you these things in your query to get to know me. And again, listeners, I'm not saying that's interesting. He asked. I did not presume I would be interesting.
So were you doing stand-up already at the time you were getting cast in movies?
I actually started doing stand-up when I was 19. I didn't start acting until I was 27, which is it's quite late, actually, in youth culture.
Yes.
But I started doing stand-up my junior year of college. I was at Providence College in Rhode Island. And I didn't seek to become an actor. It's not that I would have minded it. Some people say, I never want, I just tripped and fell into show business. It's one of the biggest lies. And also, there's this fake story sometimes you hear about, I only entered that beauty competition. Somebody else sent my pictures in, or it was on a dare, or I auditioned for such and such on a dare. Bullshit. Nobody does that. And
that's the very beginnings of the current kind of Instagram culture of, I just accidentally look amazing all the time.
It's ridiculous. And there's no shame in admitting, I would never say, boy, was I mad when somebody offered me an acting job. And no, you don't do stand-up and move to Los Angeles, where I lived. I lived in West Hollywood for about 3 years. And you don't do that so that you can perform in a vacuum. It's ridiculous to think, and I'll admit it, I'm a ham bone. And I think a personality type of most people that go into stand-up anyway is narcissism mixed with self-loathing. Mm-hmm. You have a need for attention, and yet you feel you don't deserve it, or something. At least that's how I feel. I feel clearly there must be some narcissism to say, hey, look at me, listen to me, I should be seen. Now, in modern culture, everybody can do that. With when I started doing stand-up, that was not the case. There was not the social media and all of that stuff. And, your goal was to get on the Johnny Carson show. And then you would blow up huge. You know what I mean? It only took a couple of TV shows to become a famous comic back then.
Yes.
And now you can do it in many ways, and everything's very niche. You know what I mean? Like there's so much fame doled out among so many modern technologies. I don't even know what I'm saying anymore.
Well,
I confuse myself. And also I must tell you, and I may have mentioned it at the show, I am going through a change of life that makes me, I cannot concentrate. I'm so sorry about that. So I will keep talking until you rein me in.
I had learnt the words perimenopausal 2 weeks before seeing your show because a friend of mine was talking about it. Yes,
I'm actually.
And I looked it up.
I'm post-peri, and I hate talking about stuff like that. I really do. I feel it's corny, and a lot of times, unfortunately, people still do see comedy by gender. It's unfortunate. I'm not a female comic. I'm a comic. I happen to be female. And so when you talk about things like menopause, then sometimes it's like, oh boy, here we go.
Yeah, and
that's why I said see it as gender neutral, that I'm saying this.
Sure. That's something that I don't know if you were seeing many other shows at this festival.
I haven't yet.
Generally, but there is a really exciting kind of not even a movement. It's just that there are so many more female comics now.
Yes.
And with that has come this whole wave of people going, why the fuck can't I talk about my menstrual cycle?
Well, you
why
can.
the fuck
You
can't I
can.
talk about masturbating as a woman?
Oh, you
without
actually,
it being like a big thing that it's a woman talking about.
No, and you can, and I think it's fine. I do think there's a problem. This transcends gender, both male and female. If you're going to talk about these things, let's up our game linguistically. This is well-worn territory, especially for the younger comics. And I don't blame them; they're younger. And when I was younger, I'm sure what I talked about, dating and sex and stuff. Now, I never used a lot of profanity.
Sure.
I probably did more when I was younger. Now, luckily, there's not a lot of footage because it wasn't a surveillance society back then, so you could fail privately. You can't really do that anymore. But I have noticed a lot of younger comics, male and female, use a lot of profane words for their private parts and for sexual congress. You know what I mean? And if you're going to do that, talk about these things. Like I said, there's well-worn territory. I think you've got to find an interesting way to convey these things. I think, and again, this transcends gender because there's plenty of male and female comics that talk about it and talk about it in hacky ways and talk about it in very vulgar ways.
Yeah.
And I think it's less interesting. Now, the issues I have with male and female ghettoizing has nothing to do with the topics sometimes that they choose. It's just that I think that a lot of people still in modern culture, and they don't even mean it. They'll say female comic, or they'll have shows where it's all women comics. Now, there's no reason to point that out.
Yeah.
There's no reason on the flyer to say that. And unfortunately, females do it to themselves sometimes, not all, but some ghettoize themselves. And every once in a while, you'll be asked to participate in a show that's all female. And I will only do it if it doesn't point out that fact.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? Do you see what I mean?
Understand, yes.
Like on the flyer when it says all women show, or like 5 funny ladies.
Yeah.
Now they never do it. 5 white guys. You'll never see that. Or you know what I mean? Like there's no reason to point out gender or skin color or anything like that, unless there's a reason to do so, which usually there is not, because that is what makes audience members sometimes think they do or don't like certain comics or comedy types. Like, oh, I don't want to go see a female. I don't want to go see a black comic. You know what I mean? It's because, first of all, they're not very evolved to say that. But secondly, I understand the reason sometimes unevolved people say that. It's because of the way things are labeled, or the flyers.
Yes, so much of the relationship between the comedy industry and the audience, or the potential audience, is just about how we frame things.
Right.
We tell them how it's going to be,
right,
and they
right.
go, oh, it's like this, is it?
Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, if you do stand-up the way that I do, which is not a conscious choice. It's just, your style chooses you, especially when you've been doing it so very long. And I've been doing it a very, very long time. And I tried a little bit at the beginning to have actual jokes, but it didn't suit me. You know what I mean? Like it's just not my thing, and I'm not a strong joke writer. I prefer to have a much more free, open style of doing stand-up, that it's not locked down what it is, and that each audience sees something slightly different anyway. Not everything's different, but something so that each person has seen a different show than the next person. And that's a value neutral statement. I'm not saying that like it's noble or a brag. I'm just saying that happens to be the style I do it. Now, that is hit or miss because there are certain audience members that don't understand. That's not how they think a comedy show is. That's not what they've been led to.
Yes, it looks like you're failing to do a proper one.
Right, and unfortunately, I can convince them of it too. That's my fault. There's times where I will say, "Oh, that's not going well, is it?" And even if they didn't think that, they will believe me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I have to stop doing that. And also, I have to this is just the way I do stand-up. Now, luckily, after all these years, there are enough people that know what they're getting. But every once in a while, there's people that are utterly confused or angry. Confused and angry. I guess that would be the expression on their face, and their arms are folded. And it's like, they don't understand. It's like 20 minutes in to the hour, and they still haven't heard a proper joke. Now, hopefully, my goal is to not entertain you. You know what I mean? My goal is to not be funny.
Sure.
But I just don't have a disciplined system. And as you saw, I try and lay out the notes and stuff, like I put them on a bench, and then a lot of times I don't even look at it. Or I look at it and I'm not even seeing it.
For tour dates, news, updates, whatever they are, and the latest episodes of the Comedian's Comedian podcast, go to stuartgoldsmith.com.